Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're going to be checking out a video titled Why V8 Supercars Are the Hardest to Drive. I don't know why they're the hardest to drive, however, I fell in love with Bathurst because it's just amazing, dude. Like, seeing cars spit fire, going around corners, up, down. There's nothing to hate about Bathurst, okay? So, I think Bathurst is a very legendary motor sport. And I think it comprises of almost every single thing. I'm not sure if you guys do drifts there, like if it's legal to drift around a corner or something of the sort like that. However, it's a simple fact. This race is freaking amazing and it's freaking epic. So go check out the other videos that I've made about Bathurst. It's legendary and I really enjoyed them. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video as well. Please do like and subscribe. If you have any recommendations, leave those in the comment section down below. Or preferably click that link in the pinned comment section where you can recommend videos using a Google form. Now, I'll check them out as soon as possible. Please do like and subscribe. Without further ado, let's check it out.
V8 Supercars, the most Aussie thing after a literal kangaroo. The race cars with tons of power, minimal downforce, skinny tyres and 650 horsepower V8 engines. They are quite a handful. And whilst being the literal opposite to Formula 1, they have some of the best racing in the world. However, they're also some of the most difficult race cars to drive. So, let me explain. But hang on, you might be thinking they can't be harder than F1 cars to drive. F1 cars have way more power and grip and way more load going through the driver, and not to mention the highest viewing figures about. So why would V8 touring cars be more difficult to drive? Well, it comes down to the fundamental format of the V8 Supercar series. So, let me explain. Supercars, sometimes called V8 Supercars or Aussie Supercars, is a touring car series that travel to some of the best circuits in Australia. Places like the Mount Panorama circuit at Bathurst and the streets of Adelaide. Huge, powerful cars, low grip circuits, drivers making ridiculous overtakes and smashing the cars over curbs. That's what V8 Supercars are all about. The cars have always been based on big saloons, like the Ford Falcon and the Holden Commodore. And although they look like road cars, they are purpose-built touring cars. And just looking at them, you might be starting to piece together why they are such a handful. They have loads of power and pretty skinny slick tyres. Then add in the fact that they have almost no downforce. But to understand why this makes cars a handful, we need to think about direction and torque. Under acceleration, if the friction isn't enough to equal the torque, then you get wheel spin. And so we've just answered one of the questions in the classical mechanics course from today's sponsor, Brilliant. Look at this, it's a question about friction and the tyres of a Formula 1 car. A great example of how Brilliant teach you through real examples. Their website and app is the take advantage of that. The roots of the V8 supercar come from the 90s, where Ford and Holden began making touring cars to race in the Australian Touring Car Championship, along with loads of other cars in other classes. But this Class A group of cars, the V8s, would be the fastest. They raced alongside Skyline GTRs, BMW M3s, and even Ford Sierra Cosworths. But if you know anything about Aussie supercars, you will know there has mostly only been two cars competing against each other. So the Aussies went off alone and formed the greatest touring car rivalry, Ford versus Holden. Later, the V8 Supercar series was formed with only the Falcon and the Commodore, along with a rulebook to keep them as similar in performance as possible.
Okay.
And the racing was amazing, forming the culture of hardcore fans that follow the sport. The formula has changed somewhat over the years, but has been essentially this. Big V8 saloon cars producing more than 600 horsepower and sounding amazing. Skinny slick tyres, no traction control.
He keeps mentioning about the tires being skinny, but how skinny? Like, Bathurst tire. Alright, let me just go tire size. I'm not getting no information with the tire. Why is it giving me only freaking... Dude, what the hell is going on here, man? This is not what I want. It's not giving me anything. Ah, there's actually a wheel known as Bathurst. Wow. Okay, so it's kind of hard to find that information that I want to find. Ah, that's sad.
No ABS, and not very much downforce. And the downforce has been a whole
What?
traction
Hold on,
control.
hold on.
No
no traction control, and no ABS.
No ABS and not very much downforce. And the downforce has been a hot topic over the years, with wings getting bigger as the teams chase more and more grip. But with the rule makers removing the downforce again to improve the racing. Just like F1, downforce is good for performance, but can lead to single file racing. So supercars have all but removed it in the newest regulations, in order to lengthen the braking zones and still allow some of the bold overtaking moves that supercars are known for. Remember the Ford and Holden thing that I mentioned? Well, in 2013, the championship made a bold call to open up the series to other manufacturers, allowing Nissan, Volvo and Mercedes to enter the series. Since then, the rising costs of entering the series have put them off. As often happens, the development race was relentless, with teams spending more and more to go faster. So this year will be the start of Gen 3, with a whole new philosophy. The cars are going to be big, muscular, with less downforce, and the drivers are going to have to do a lot more. So this year's supercars are semi-spec, meaning that there are a load of parts that are shared, and the chassis are actually the same between the Chevy and the Ford, meaning they can make them as even as possible. Even the drivetrain and gearboxes are all the same to keep the costs low. So you might be thinking, hang on, Chevy, not Holden? Well, General Motors stopped selling the Holden, so changed their efforts to the Camaro. But really, the fan base are the same. Or you guys will let me know. And a similar thing happened in the Ford camp a little before. Ford stopped selling the Falcon and moved their efforts to the Mustang. But with everything being as even as...
That makes a little bit more sense, because like he's been mentioning Falcon and the other car, I don't remember the name of it. It's not the most common car that I've known, right? And you can clearly see that this is a Camaro and a Mustang. Like you can obviously see that, which it's a little bit wild to think that those are actually produced in Australia. It's still a big shocker to me. It just doesn't make any sense. Like all my life I've known those cars and I've loved those cars, especially the Camaro, and it's also made in Australia. It's pretty wild.
Possible to keep the racing close, teams brought something up. They wanted the Mustang to sound like a Mustang and to have the same engine, but so did the Camaro. However, although they're both V8 engines, they really are very different. Ford run a 5.4 litre quad cam engine, whereas the Camaro runs a slightly more old school pushrod motor. Looking here, you can see that they do actually look very different. So the Ford is an overhead cam, meaning the cams are directly pushing the valves. The Chevy has cams that are lower in the engine and uses pushrods to move the valves. But the Supercar series have done something remarkable. They said, that's fine, but send every engine to us. They've essentially tuned all of the engines to perform the same on the dyno. The same torque, the same power, and even the same power curve. Meaning the manufacturers are running road-relevant cars, but the racing is still very close. And I think that's very clever. And anything that's good for racing is good in my opinion. And they even do the same with the body of the car. Obviously, the Road Camaro and the Mustang are shaped differently, and one shape may have an advantage over another, in terms of drag, downforce, or maybe both. So the Supercar series actually run testing with the cars to match them within a few kilograms of downforce and drag to each other. Right, so we get the technicalities of the cars, but why are they so difficult to drive? Firstly, we've already mentioned the power. 650 horsepower is a lot.
I mean, only a fool would not know why it's so difficult to drive. No ABS, no traction, 650 at the wheel. You got to be dumb to think that would be easy to drive.
For a race car. But especially so for one with such narrow tyres. Rear tyres are 300mm wide, and for context, GT3 cars have less power and run 325 wide. And for context,
what is 300mm, man? Good grief. 300. I think all tires are measured in millimeters, actually. 300 mm tire, because the tires always have like 100 to like 300. I mean, 300 is a wide ass tire, I can't lie. But I mean, it's a race car, but 300 is a pretty wide tire now. Come on now. I'm not gonna call that skinny at all, because I was thinking he probably talking about like a 150 or something of the sort like that. But I've never heard of a skinny slick before, but obviously smaller slicks would be considered skinny, but that's not a small tire. I'm just being honest. Comparing that to road tires, that is not small. That is very, very wide.
Context, GT3 cars have less power and run 325mm tyres. F1 tyres are 405mm wide, so a lot wider. So the drivers really have to creep on the throttle to avoid lighting up the rears and cooking the tyres. Apparently, it's pretty normal to still not be at full throttle in third gear from a hairpin. And the tyres become an issue under braking as well. The cars have no ABS, which in itself is unusual in GT cars, but of course, not a problem. What is a problem is that the cars are pretty fast in a straight line and also weigh a lot. So getting them stopped really separates the good from the great drivers. And I spoke to my mate Lucas about this. He was a factory driver for Nissan and tested in these cars.
And these cars, as you know, they have very narrow tires, very low grip on the tires, no traction control, no ABS and sequential gearbox, and no downforce at all. What I found in that test is that the most important and the time comes in the very end of the braking zone. You have to be very gentle, very smooth on the last part of the braking, and that makes a huge difference on the car entering the corner or not, or making understeer or oversteer.
And that makes sense. With a car with minimal downforce, getting the car from the braking phase into the turning phase will always be difficult, especially in a car that's relatively heavy. But what Lucas says suggests that this is where a lot of the lap time between the rest of the pack and the top drivers is. But potentially the most difficult thing is shifting. The cars run sequential gearboxes that are in a transaxle layout, meaning the gearbox is built into the rear axle for better weight distribution. But what's difficult is getting through the gears. On the way up through the gearbox, it's easy. The drivers can stay flat out, pull the gear lever towards them, and the ECU cuts the power and the gear goes in. It's called a flat shift. But on the way down the gears, the drivers are heel and toeing. And we do this in manual cars where you're braking with your right foot, you're clutching with your left, but as you slot the gear in, you blip the throttle with your braking foot, meaning you match the engine speed with the wheel speed and avoid locking the driven wheels. It's a challenge in any car, but of course you do get used to it. However, with the braking being so difficult in these cars, this downshift technique must make things a little bit harder. Then take all of that and put 24 cars on the super narrow streets of Adelaide or Surfers Paradise with massive curbs and tight corners. The drivers send some proper dive bombs and really get their elbows out. That's why supercars are difficult to drive, but super underrated as a racing series. You should watch this video where Lucas and I explain driving the super weird Delta Wing. Watch more.
I believe him. When he started explaining that shit at the end, bro, like, oh my gosh, the heel and toe and shit, bro, like, good lord, you gotta do so much. You gotta do so much. It sounds terrifying. Like, when you see, like, he mentioned about the tires being skinny, and I was so confused. 300 millimeters, right? That's pretty wide. That is not a normal road tire. That's like a big SUV, X5, GLE, what was some Porsche Cayenne, right? The big boys, those are the tires they have. Sports cars, that's the tires they have. I was surprised, you know, but it's a race car, so I understand. But man, 400 is what is on the F1 car. That is insane. That is out of this world. I did not know that, but hey, now I know, which is pretty cool. So that was beautiful to watch, and I absolutely enjoyed that. And I hope you guys did as well and learned something like I did. So shout out to Driver61. Link will be in the description for the original video, so you guys can go over there, go check it out. Maybe he was actually a pro driver. Who knows? But yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. I'm out of here. Peace.